name is Dr. Ruqayya Shahid. I'm a histopathologist at DIMC. So this is a section from the skin. As you know, skin has three parts: epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis. Now, looking at the epidermis, these are the layers of the human skin. This is epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis. So you can see this is a epidermis. It has the topmost layer is the stratum corneum. Then comes stratum lucidum, granulosum, then spinosum, and the basal layer. Today, the cells forming the epithelium are called the squamous cells, which are also known as the keratinocytes. Okay, so they are they are they as they mature, they migrate from the basal to the superficial layers of the epidermis. The focus today, our focus will be on these cells. These cells are the melanocytes, which, as you can see, these are present in the these cells are present in the these cells are present in the basal layer, and we have long processes which are protruding between the keratinocytes. The function of the melanocytes is to synthesize melanin. And how do they do that? They convert tyrosine into melanin. And the melanin synthesized in the melanocytes is stored in the melanosomes. And these, through long processes, you can see these melanosomes migrate into the keratinocytes. So in this way, melanin pigment within the melanosomes is migrated into the layers of keratinocytes. So these layers all become pigmented. So melanin is basically synthesized in the melanocytes and is transferred into these keratinocytes through the processes of the melanocytes. So today we are going to do disorders of pigmentation. Now, looking at the individual cells, these are all the keratinocytes that are present here. This is the basal layer, and the blue cells here in the basal layer are the melanocytes. Now, these are the dendritic cells which are present within the epidermis. So, skin comprises of mostly of squamous cells, which are also called keratinocytes, and they have abundant amount of keratin in the cytoplasm. They are adherent to each other through connections which are called the desmosomes. Now, melanocytes, as we saw, which are present in the basal layer, and they synthesize melanin. Then dendritic cells. Dendritic cells, these are part of the mononuclear phagocyte system and synthesized in the, or they are born in the bone marrow, and they migrate into the skin. There are two types of dendridocytes or the dendritic cells: intraepidermal dendritic cells. These are also known as the Langerhans cells. They secrete a number of factors and cytokines and form part of the innate immune system. They are the antigen presenting cells. They migrate to the, once the antigen is, once they come into contact with the antigens, they take up that antigen and they present those antigens to the lymphocytes. These lymphocytes then mature and take part in the adaptive immune system. Similar dendritic cells are also present in the dermis, where they are called the dendrocytes. So these are basically dendritic cells, which are part of the mononuclear macrocyte and phagocyte system. So looking at the microscopic picture of the epidermis, as you can see, this is a thin layer of keratin which is present, or the stratum corneum. This is stratum granulosum. You can see this thin layer of granulosa or granular pigmented granular squamous epithelial cells are present. Now, beneath this is the lamina lucida, and then here are this is the basal layer of the keratinocytes. As you can see, these keratinocytes are these cells which have some cytoplasm, pigmented cytoplasm in them. Then these are the small rounded cells are the melanocytes. So these melanocytes, they synthesize melanin and they transfer this melanin to the keratinocytes. So you can see melanocytes are basically not pigmented, but the melanin is present within the keratinocytes, giving the pigmented color or pigmentation or the color to the keratinocytes. So these small cells present at the basal layer are the melanocytes, whereas most of this or the rest of the cells are the keratinocytes. So some other cells are also present, which are lymphocytes. So following the stimulation by dendritic cells in the regional lymph nodes, the T lymphocytes, they express an adhesion molecule called the cutaneous lymphocyte antigen or CLA. And CCR4 are the chemokine receptors, and CCR10, they leave the lymph node and home back into the dermis. So the lymphocytes that are present in the dermis are CD4 plus T lymphocytes and CD8 plus T lymphocytes. And all these lymphocytes, Tregs and B lymphocytes, T lymphocytes, they have CLA antigen and CCR4 receptors on them, which can be used to identify the dermal lymphocytes. Then there are some efferent nerve fibers and adnexal components in the skin as well. Now coming to some basic definitions of used by the dermatologists and dermatopathologists related to pigmentary lesions. So macule or a patch. Macule or a patch is a circumscribed flat lesion distinguished from the surrounding skin by color. So basically the macules and patches, they are colored pigmented flat lesions on the skin. Macules are 5 mm or less, and patches are more than 5 millimeter in diameter. So basic difference is the size. So macule is small and the patches are greater than 5 millimeter, and these are colored lesions. Then comes the papule or a nodule. So these are elevated dome-shaped or flat-shaped lesions. Again, the papules are smaller in size, whereas the nodules are larger than 5 millimeter. Then plaque, these are elevated but flat-topped, and usually greater than 5 mm across. So we have macules or patches, which are pigmented, flat lesions, level lesions, more than or less than 5 mm. When it is less than 5 mm, it is a macule. When it is more than 5 mm, it's a patch. Then elevated dome-shaped lesions are papules or nodules. Papules are small, nodules are big. Then plaques are elevated flat-topped lesions, which are greater than 5 mm. Now coming to the first pigmentary lesion, which is very common, and is called freckle or ephilis. Freckles are more common in light colored individuals or lightly pigmented individuals, and usually small, several centimeters in diameter, and tanned or red brown, present on the sun exposed area, especially on the face, and they fade during winter and darken in the summer on exposure to skin. So hyperpigmentation of the freckles results from increased amount of melanin pigment within the basal keratinocytes. Associated melanocytes may be slightly enlarged but are normal in density. So this is a picture of a freckle. So as you can see, this is normal skin. Only the amount of melanin pigment within the keratinocytes is increased. There is no increase in the melanocytes. Okay, so the melanocytes are normal in number, but there is increased pigment production by these melanocytes, which is then transferred to the keratinocytes. So these are very common. And cafe or late spots, which are seen in neurofibromatosis, are also like this, but these are patches and usually larger. So this is how the freckles look like. Now the second pigmentary lesion is lentigo. Lentigens is the plural, and it also involves the skin and may also involve the mucous membranes, and may present as macules or patches, and usually 5 to 10 mm, and they do not darken when exposed to sunlight as opposed to freckles. So on histology, the basic difference is that these are there is melanocytic hyperplasia restricted to the cell layer immediately above the basement membrane that produces a hyperpigmented basal layer. And there is elongation and thinning of the rete ridges. So this is a lentigo. Let's see the normal skin first. So this was the normal skin for those. I'm repeating it for those who have joined us late. So this is a normal skin comprising of the keratinocytes, which are the predominant population, and melanocytes, which are sparsely present along the basement membrane, and the melanin is synthesized by these melanocytes and transferred via these long processes or appendages into the keratinocytes. So the keratinocytes have contained the melanin pigment. So in lentigo, what we see is that there is increased and not only increased melanin synthesis, but there's also hyperplasia of the melanocytes. So these melanocytes, you can see these are small cells here. These are hyperplastic with elongation of these rete ridges. These are the rete ridges and the melanocytes which are present all along this basement membrane. So there's hyperplasia of these melanocytes and fusion and elongation of these rete ridges. As you can see, some of these rete ridges are fusing. So, so this is a lentigo. As you can see, this is a patch present on the skin, a colored patch present on the skin. So the difference between a lentigo and a freckle? So freckles, these are present on the sun exposed areas and are a result of increased pigment production by the melanocytes. Melanocytes are not hyperplastic, whereas in lentigo, there's increased production of the melanin pigment and hyperplasia of the melanocytes as well. So this is lentigo. It is due to hyperplastic process in the melanocytes. So the first question is, a 15-year girl presents with small oval tan brown macules on her face. Biopsy showed linear melanocytic hyperplasia. So remember the term hyperplasia when it comes, it's not freckles. And hyperpigmentation of the basal layer will elongation and thinning of the rete ridges. So what is the best possible diagnosis? So it is a lentigo. As you can see, this is a classic picture of maybe freckle, but however, there's melanocytic hyperplasia, which favors it to be a lentigo. Now coming to the third pigmented lesion, melanocytic nevus, pigmented nevus, or it's also called more. Now the melanocytic nevus are common benign neoplasms caused in most cases by acquired activating mutations in the components of RAS signaling pathway. Acquired melanocytic nevi are the most common type and are found in virtually all individuals. So the second question is, melanocytic nevi are common benign skin neoplasms. It is caused by acquired mutations in which pathway? So it is in the RAS pathway, in the RAS signaling pathway. Now coming to the morphology of the melanocytic nevi, these common acquired melanocytic nevi are tan, brown, uniformly pigmented. They can be small papule or usually nodule and or macules, and have well-defined rounded borders. So melanocytic nevi are thought to progress through a series of morphological changes over time. So the earliest lesion are junctional nevi, which consist of aggregates or nest of round cells that grow along the dermoepidermal junction. So the earliest nevus, so the earliest lesion is a junctional nevus. So the first one is normal skin showing only scattered dendritic melanocytes within the dermal epidermal junction, whereas the B is the junctional nevus. As you can see, there is some hyperplasia of the melanocytes here at the junction. Now this is called junctional nevus. So the earliest lesion consists of aggregates or nests of round cells that grow along the dermoepidermal junction. The nuclei of the nevus cells are uniform, rounded, contain inconspicuous nuclei, show little or no mitotic activity. Eventually, most junctional nevi grow into the underlying dermis as nests of cords to form compound nevi. So as the time passes on, this junctional nevus, it forms a compound nevus. And what is a compound nevus? This is a nevus in which you see junctional activity or junctional melanocytes as well as the dermal melanocytes. So the melanocytes, they migrate from the dermoepidermal junction into the dermis. So this is now called the compound nevus. As the time further passes on, you can see the junctional component has gone away or vanished. Only the dermal component remains here. Now this is called a dermal nevus. As further time passes on, the dermal nevus, you can see it undergoes a process which is called neuronatization, a change that is referred to as maturation. So these dermal cells, nevus cells, they mature over time and they acquire some properties which are known as neurotization. They undergo some neuronal differentiation. So the first step is a junctional nevus. As the time passes on, it becomes a compound nevus with both the junctional and the dermal components, then further matures into a dermal nevus, then further matures into neurotization. Okay. In older lesions, the epidermal nest may be lost entirely to form pure intradermal nevus. The superficial nevus cells are large, produce melanin, and grow in nests. As you go deeper into the dermis, the cells become smaller, produce little or no pigment, and appears as cord or single cells. At the deepest level, these cells acquire fusiform contours and grow in fascicles, resembling neural tissue. Now, this is called neurotization. This metamorphosis correlates with the enzymatic changes within the melanocytes as well. So there is progressive loss of tyrosinase activity. So these cells are no longer producing melanin pigment. However, they have acquired a cholinesterase activity. Now they are more resembling neural cells, and they are not pigmented. They are called nerve-like neural cells. So deeper. Now these cells look like nerve-like neural cells. So this is a process of neuronatization. Now the third question is, skin biopsy from a melanocytic lesion in a teenage displayed intraepidermal nest means the melanocytic nests are present in the dermis and cords of cells in the dermis as well as in the dermis. So the nuclei are uniform, rounded, contain inconspicuous nuclei, and show little or no mitotic activity. Means these cells, they do not have any atypical features. So what is the best possible diagnosis? Means you have cells both in the dermis and at the junction or in the epidermis. So this is a compound nevus. So this is a picture of the junctional type of nevus. Grossly lesions are small, relatively flat, symmetric, or uniform, but they can be large. Even large lesions can also be seen in congenital forms. In congenital nevi can be very large, but this you can see the microscopic picture in which there is clusters or nests of melanocytes present at the dermoepidermis. So you do not see any nests in the dermis here, so it is junctional nevus. Now this is a compound nevus. This is the gross picture of a compound nevus. It is raised, dome-shaped nodule, and this is a microscopic picture. Here you can see this is the epidermis and these are the rete ridges. Then some proliferations of melanocytes can be seen at the dermoepidermal junction. Now you can see a large number of nests that are present in the dermis. So you see now the nests are present in the epidermis and dermis. So this means it's a compound nevus. The symmetry and uniform pigment distribution suggests a benign process. This logically compound nevi combine the features of junctional nevus with intraepidermal nevus cells with nests and cords in the dermal nevus cells. So this is a dermal compound nevus. The features helpful in distinguishing benign nevi from melanoma. So melanoma is the malignant counterpart of the pigmentary lesions. So how do you distinguish benign nevi from the malignant melanomas? Is that junctional activity is the order present in the nevi. That is what you will see is the junctional nevus, which will mature to form a compound nevus, which will further over time form an intradermal nevus. Moreover, the cells of the benign nevi, moreover, the architecture of the nevus is regular, which has circumscribed borders, and the pigmentation is uniform. And if you look at the individual cells, there is maturation in depth present or neurotization present. Now, the nuclear features, they do not display any atypical features, and mostly there is no mitosis present. So there's some variants of melanocytic nevi. So these are first is the congenital nevus, which are present as at birth, and large variants have increased melanoma risk. Then there's some blue nevus, spindle and epithelioid cell nevus, which is called Spitz nevus. Then there's halo nevus, and there's dysplastic nevus. Now we are going to do dysplastic nevus. So dysplastic nevus are important because they may be direct precursors of melanomas. So as the name indicates, dysplastic nevi, they have dysplasia present in them, means they are pre-malignant. And when multiple in number are a marker of increased risk of melanoma. The association of melanocytic nevi with melanoma was made almost 200 years ago, but a potential precursor of melanoma was not identified until 1978 when Clark and his colleagues described the lesions that are now referred to as dysplastic nevi. So they worked on this, and there were studies of families which were affected by dysplastic nevi syndrome. So these families, an individual in this family would have a number of dysplastic nevi, and hundreds of them, and would over time these dysplastic nevi would turn out into a melanoma. So this is an autosomal disorder which has a tendency to develop multiple dysplastic nevi and melanoma. The probability that the person with dysplastic nevi syndrome will develop melanoma is over 50% by the age of 60 years. However, not all the melanomas in individuals with dysplastic nevi syndrome arise from dysplastic nevi. Now, the pathogenesis of the dysplastic nevi, they have Clark and his colleagues, they proposed stages in the development of dysplastic nevi and their eventual progression to melanoma, presumably through stepwise acquisition of mutations or epigenetic changes in the melanocytes. There are acquired mutations in NRAS and BRAF pathways, and there is inherited loss of function mutations in CDKN2A. So this is how a dysplastic nevus look like. So this is epidermis, this is dermis. As you can see, these are the melanocytes at the dermo-epidermal junction or at the basement membrane. You can see there is an increase in the number of the melanocytes. Then what else you see? You see that these are the reedy ridges which are fusing due to these melanocytes. And what else? The melanocytes here, they also have some nuclear abnormalities. They may have mitosis, they may have enlarged nuclei and prominent nuclei. So now they have some atypical features as well. And shouldering means that apart from the main lesion, these melanocytes are extending further lateral to the main lesion. And these nests are irregular in shape. So this is a picture of dysplastic nevi. As you can see, there's a number of nevi which are present on the back of the person, and these are variable in pigmentation. So the pigmentation is not uniform. In some places it's darker, in some places it's lighter, and it has some shoulder effect. And you can see the pigmentation is extending beyond the main lesion. So this is a microscopic picture of the dysplastic nevus. You can see that these are the reedy ridges which are irregular in shape, and some reedy ridges are fused here. Look at this. So this is a dysplastic nevus. You can see there are proliferations of melanocytes here, and these melanocytes are proliferating and causing the reedy ridges to fuse with each other. So these reedy ridges are fused with each other. These are all of these are nests of melanocytes, and this fusion of the reedy ridges with each other, and some inflammatory infiltrate is present in the dermis, and you can see there's some, due to inflammation, there is some fibrosis also, and some pigment you can see in the dermis as well. So dysplastic nevi are larger than most of the acquired nevi. They are usually flat macules or slightly raised plaques, means they are larger in size, larger than 5 mm, with pebbly surface or target-like lesions with a darker raised center and irregular flat periphery. They can be recognized by their size, their variability in pigmentation, which is also known as variegation, and irregular borders. So look at this picture, they have very irregular borders. They have a target-like appearance, and they vary in pigmentation. Unlike ordinary moles, this plastic nevi occur on both sun-exposed and protected body surfaces. Microscopically, dysplastic nevi involve both the dermis and the epidermis. They exhibit, means that they are compound in form. They are present in the epidermis and as well as in the dermis, and they exhibit some architectural and cytological atypia. So the nevus cell nest within the epidermis may be enlarged and often fuse with the adjacent nest. So single nevus cells replace the normal basal layer along the dermoepidermal junction. They produce lentiginous hyperplasia. Now there are some cytological atypia in these melanocytes in the form of nuclear enlargement, irregular angulated nuclear contours, and hyperchromasia. Now coming into the dermis, there is some linear fibrosis surrounding the epidermal ridges that are involved by the nevus. Associated alterations in the superficial dermis include lymphocytic infiltrate, which is usually sparse. There's release of melanin from the dead nevus cells into the dermis, which is called melanin incontinence, where it is phagocytosed by the macrophages. So diagnosis of the for dysplastic nevus is based on the constellation of these features. So this is a picture of a dysplastic nevus. So you can see that this is epidermis and this is dermis, and there's some, you can see there's fusion of the reedy ridges with each other, and you can see some irregular proliferations of melanocytes which are present along these reedy ridges. Some nests are present here, some present here. Whereas this is the dermis, you can see this is linear fibrosis in the dermis. Then there is inflammatory infiltrate, means that lymphocytes and macrophages are present in the dermis. And there is some melanin leaking, which is leaking into the dermis, which is engulfed by macrophages. So this is called melanoragia or pigment incontinence. So you can see the pigmented macrophages present here and there in the dermis. Now, another question, skin biopsy from a plaque-like variably pigmented lesion in a 50-year-old man showed nevus cell nest within the epidermis with enlarged and fused. So it can be epidermal or it can be dermal or a compound form. Means dysplastic nevi can be junctional, means the activity is present at the junction like here, and some component may be present in the dermis as well, comprising of these nests of melanocytes. So they can be junctional only or they can be compound. So these Nevus cells display nuclear enlargement, irregular nuclear contours, and hyperchromasia. So when the nuclear abnormalities come, so then it is a dysplastic nevus. Dermis has linear fibrosis and inflammatory infiltrate. So what is the best possible diagnosis? So it's a dysplastic nevus. All these nevi, epidermal and junctional nevi, they do not display nuclear features and dermal changes. Whereas lentigo, it cannot be lentigo and it is not malignant melanoma. It is now the potential steps of tumor progression in a dysplastic nevus. A is lentiginous hyperplasia. B is lentiginous junctional nevus. You can see this junctional nevus, and then junctional nevus, it forms the now C is lentiginous compound nevus with abnormal architecture and cytological features. So this is now a dysplastic nevus where you can see the junctional component here, which in which the cells display some nuclear abnormalities, and the nevus cells are also present in the dermis. And here you see linear fibrosis of the dermis. The fusion of the retipex is also present. Now, as the lesion progresses, you can see marked nuclear abnormalities are present in these cells. Now, this is an early melanoma developing within the dysplastic nevus. And this is an advanced melanoma where you can see these melanoma cells now, they are not only migrating in a downward fashion, they're also migrating in an upward fashion. So there's epidermal migration of these melanoma cells and downward growth of these melanoma cells, whereas vascular invasion is also present. So this is how a dysplastic nevus, it transforms into a melanoma. And compare this progression of dysplastic nevus to non-dysplastic nevus. This is a non-dysplastic nevus where you see a junctional nevus growing into a compound nevus, then into an intradermal nevus. And this is where you see a dysplastic nevus growing into a malignant melanoma. Now coming to the melanoma. Melanoma is the most deadly of all skin cancers, highly malignant tumor, strongly linked to acquired mutations caused by exposure to ultraviolet radiation in the sunlight. The great preponderance of melanoma arises in the skin. Other sites of melanoma are also present, which include mucous membranes like oral mucous membranes, anogenital mucosal surfaces, and oropharynx, gastrointestinal tract, genitourinary tracts, esophagus, meninges, and uvea of the eye. All of these have melanocytes present within them. So the pathogenesis is that 10 to 15% of the melanomas are inherited as an autosomal dominant trait with variable penetrance associated with germline mutations. Majority of the melanomas are sporadic and are related to single predisposing environmental factor. And what is that? This is ultraviolet radiation damage from the sun exposure. Sequencing of melanoma genomes has demonstrated a high rate of point mutations that bear the signature of damaging effects of UV radiation on the DNA. So these melanoma cells, when they were sequenced, so there were a large number of point mutations present in the DNA of these cells. The melanomas most commonly arise on sun-exposed surfaces, particularly the upper back in men and back and legs in women. Lightly pigmented individuals are at higher risk than darkly pigmented individuals. So the most frequent driver mutation in the melanoma affects three parts. So it's a multi-step process. So multiple mutations are acquired and three components or three areas are affected. The first is cell cycle control. The second is pro-growth pathways, and the third, the telomerase pathways. So coming to the first one, the cell cycle control. CDKN2A is the main focus of mutation, which is present in the melanoma. In melanoma, this gene or complex locus is affected, and it encodes three tumor suppressor genes. So this locus here, CDKN2A, is mutated and it encodes 3 tumor suppressor genes: P15, INK4B, P16, INK4A, and P14, ARF. So 3 tumor suppressor genes are encoded through this single complex, and these include P15, P16, and P14. So where do the roles of P15 and 16 come? So this is a cell cycle. As you can see, there are 4 stages of cell cycle: the G1, S, G2, and M. So as the cells progress from G1 to GS and from G2 to GM, you see 2 checkpoints here. So these checkpoints are tightly regulated to prevent any mutated cell to undergo cell division. So the first checkpoint here, G1 to S, is regulated by retinoblastoma protein here, which you will remember is coded by the retinoblastoma gene, which is mutated in retinoblastoma tumors of the eye and was discovered in that way. So the retinoblastoma, the major limiting factor is the phosphorylation of the retinoblastoma protein here. So it happens, phosphorylation happens, and it's a go signal for the cell to continue to divide. So, and it is progressed by cyclin and cyclin-dependent kinases. These cyclins and cyclin-dependent kinases, when they combine, they phosphorylate the retinoblastoma protein. And as you can see, there are a number of cyclin-dependent kinase inhibitors. These are all tumor suppressor genes because they suppress the progression of the cell cycle. So these the tumor suppressor genes that we are interested in are P15 and P16. So as you can see, these are cyclin-dependent kinase inhibitors. And these are inhibiting cyclin D1 and cyclin-dependent kinase 4. And thus inhibiting the retinoblastoma gene or retinoblastoma protein to be phosphorylated. So these have an inhibitory effect on the cell cycle progression. So now the loss of P16 is clearly implicated in human melanoma. P16 and P14 as well, they inhibit cell-dependent kinase 4, CDK4, and cyclin-dependent kinase 6 or CDK6, thus reinforcing the ability of the retinoblastoma tumor suppressor gene to block the cells in the G1 phase of the cell cycle. So they do not let the cells to progress from the G1 to M phase. Now coming to the third one, the P14. The P14 enhances the activity of the P53 tumor suppressor by inhibiting MDM2, which is an oncoprotein that stimulates P53 degradation. So basically P14 helps in the function of P53 by inhibiting the inhibitory protein for the P53, which is MDM2. So the net effect, CDKN2A. So CDKN2A, as you remember, CDKN2A is encoding these 3 tumor suppressor genes, P15, 16, and 14. So here are P15 and 16, which are cell-dependent kinase inhibitors, inhibiting the cell progression from G1 to S. Whereas P14 is, stimulates or it helps in the action of P53. So the net effect is that CDKN2 mutation, which involves these 3 tumor suppressors, the net result is that there's increased melanocytic proliferation due to loss of cells to cell control, cell cycle control, and escape from oncogene-induced cellular senescence. So this is where the P14 is acting. So you can see P14 is inhibiting MDM2 protein, which is inhibiting P53. So in a way, P14 is helping P53 to function properly. And as you know, the P53, it's a guardian of genome, and it leads to it protects the cells, it inhibits the cell cycle, it activates the repair pathways, and it also induces senescence in the in any cells that are mutated. So when P53 detects any mutation, it inhibits the cell cycle, it activates the repair genes, and if the repair cannot be done, it leads to, it promotes apoptosis or senescence in the mutated cells. So now we have P14 mutated here, P16 mutated here, which is activating CDCN2 and CDKN2. So now coming to the second type of mutations. These mutations activate pro-growth pathway signals. They increase in RAS and PI3K ACT signaling pathway. So activating mutations are present in BRAF, a serine threonine kinase that is downstream of RAS and seen in 40% to 50% of the melanoma cells. So mutations in these were tumor suppressor genes. Now coming to mutations in the growth promoting genes. So this is important. This is an important pathway in the melanoma. It starts from the growth factor attaching to the ligand present in the cell membrane. As you can see, this is a receptor tyrosine kinase here. So receptor tyrosine kinase, when it is activated by attachment of the growth factor, it leads to activation of RAS, which then has two pathways. One is BRAF pathway, which leads to proliferation of the cells. Then the other is PI3K pathway, which leads to survival of the cells. As you can see, several growth promoting mutations are present in the melanoma. And the first important one, as you can see from here, is the KIT mutant in the tyrosine kinase receptor. So one of the mutation is present in a tyrosine kinase receptor. Then this next mutation you can see in RAS protein. Then you can see mutation in BRAF protein. All these aesthetics one are mutations. And so growth factor activates signaling circuits involved in receptor tyrosine kinase KIT, RAS, and two key downstream pathways that include BRAF and PI3K pathways. Proteins indicated in aesthetics are mutated in melanoma. Components of these pathways are being targeted by drugs are indicated. So you can see there are a number of drugs which can inhibit, which are used in melanoma and can inhibit the growth of melanoma cells. The important one is this imatinib, which is now being used for 15 years for the treatment of melanoma. It inhibits the tyrosine kinase receptor and inhibits the melanin growth of the melanoma cells. Then some of the drugs are used along these PI3K pathway, and some of the drugs like BRAF inhibitors and MEK inhibitors are used to inhibit cells along this pathway. So mutations, now the third type of mutations are those that activate the telomerase. So, there is a sequencing. Sequencing of sporadic melanomas indicated mutations in the promoter of TERT gene. TERT encodes the catalytic subunit of the telomerase. So mutations increase TERT expression, suggesting that they act as antidote to senescence. So once the telomerase is activated, it inhibits the degradation of the telomeres. The telomerase, it maintains the telomeres present at the end of the chromosomes. Thus, they inhibit the degradation or senescence in the cells. Melanoma shows, now coming to the morphology, on examination, melanoma shows striking variation in color. There's marked variation and the shades are black, brown, red, dark blue, gray in a single lesion. White, flesh-colored hypopigmentation may also appear due to regression of the tumor. The borders of the melanoma are irregular and often notched, unlike the smooth, round, uniform borders of melanocytic nevi. Now, there are patterns of melanoma growth. The radial growth pattern describes the horizontal spread of melanoma within the epidermis and superficial dermis. And now the tumor lacks the capacity to metastasize in radial growth pattern. Whereas tumors in radial growth phase fall into several clinical pathological classes, including lentigo maligna, which presents as an indolent lesion on the face of older men and may remain in the radial growth phase for several decades. Superficial spreading is the most common type of melanoma, usually involves unexposed skin. Where the third type is acral or mucosal lentiginous melanoma that is unrelated to sun exposure. Now, this is a radial growth phase of the melanoma in which the cells are growing in a horizontal manner, and they have not yet the capacity to metastasize. As you can see, the cells are present at the dermoepidermal junction in this picture. Marked inflammation is present in the dermis. Now the second phase is the vertical growth phase, in which the tumor cells, clinically it is heralded by the appearance of a nodule and correlates with emergence of a tumor subclone with metastatic potential. The probability of metastasis in vertical growth phase correlates with the depth of invasion of Breslow's thickness is the distance measured from the superficial epidermal granular layer to the deepest intradermal tumor cells. So vertical growth pattern is when the tumor grows down into the dermis in a vertical manner. Now it has the capability to metastasize. As you can see, the melanoma cells present here in the form of nest, which are very irregular in the dermis. Some cells are also present here, and some are also migrating upwards into the epidermis. And abundant pigment is leaking out from these nests and is present in the surrounding inflammatory cells or the melanophages or the macrophages. As you can see, these cells of forming these nests, they have marked nuclear abnormalities and some mitotic activity as well. So the individual melanoma cells are usually larger than normal melanocytes and found in the melanocytic than the cells found in the melanocytic nevi. They have large nuclei with irregular contours. Chromatin is clumped at the periphery of the nuclear membranes. They have prominent nuclei. So appearance of tumor cells is similar in radial and vertical growth phases. A tiny fraction of atypical lesions fall in the gray zone between the dysplastic nevi and melanoma, and they are classified as, they have been termed as melanocytic tumors of uncertain malignant potential. And such lesions require complete excision and close follow-up of the patient. Now, this is melanoma in a vertical growth phase. As you can see, these nests of melanoma cells, these are present in the dermis, and looking at the individual cells, they have large nuclei with occasional prominent nuclei present here, and some mitotic activity which can be appreciated here. Now, this inset is a lymph node in which you can see melanoma cells have migrated or metastasized. And this confers a poor prognosis. Now, the prognostic factors for melanoma include tumor depth or tumor thickness, which is measured from the epidermis granular layer to down vertically, the deepest part of the tumor. This is called Breslow's thickness. And the more the tumor depth or the more the Breslow's thickness, the poor is the prognosis. The number of mitosis, the greater the number of mitosis, the poor is the prognosis. Then tumor regression. Tumor regression, presumably due to host immune response, it represents a better prognosis, but in some studies, it says that it may have a poor prognosis. Ulceration of the overlying skin has a poor prognosis. Presence of number of tumor infiltrating lymphocytes. Again, variable studies suggest variable results. Some say that tumor infiltrating lymphocytes are good, whereas other studies say that they help in metastasis and may have a poor prognostic factor. Then gender. Males usually have a poor prognosis. Location, central body tumors have poor prognosis because of the difficulty in excising them. Extremities, melanomas present in the extremities usually have a better prognosis. Determinants of more favorable prognosis is that thinner tumor depth, no or very few mitosis, a brisk tumor infiltrating lymphocyte response, and absence of regression and lack of ulceration. So regression is a poor prognosis. Whereas tumor infiltrating lymphocytes, it is regarded as a good prognostic feature. Since most melanoma initially metastasize to regional lymph nodes, additional prognostic information may be obtained by performing a sentinel lymph node biopsy. So this is a lymph node biopsy in which melanoma cells can be identified. So the clinically warning signs are sometimes called the ABCDE of the melanomas. These include asymmetry, irregular borders, variegated color, increasing diameter, and evolution of change over time, especially if rapid. So this is a melanoma. You can see it is asymmetrical. It has very irregular borders. It has variegated color, and the diameter or the evolution may be obtained from the patient. The most consistent clinical sign are changes in color, size, shape of a pigmented lesion. Other features of pigmented lesions that should raise concern are a diameter greater than 6 mm, any change in appearance, or the new onset of itching or pain. Molecular insights into the pathogenesis of melanoma have spawned attempts to treat this cancer with the target drugs of RAS and PI3K-ACT pathways. So as you can see, a number of target drugs are available for treatment of melanoma. Molecular insights into the pathogenesis. So now there's some pictures. So as you can see, these are just a reminder, these are keratinocytes, and these round cells here are melanocytes. This is a lentigo with proliferation of melanocytes along the dermal epidermal junction. Now this is a junctional nevus where you can see the proliferating melanocytes. They are present at the junction of the dermoepidermal, dermoepidermal junction. Now this is a congenital nevus which can be large. Now this is a congenital nevus. In this you can see most of the component is present in the dermis. So this can also be called a dermal nevus. Now this is a dysplastic nevus. You can see it has a junctional component and a dermal component. You can see this proliferation of melanocytes and fusion of reedy ridges. Now some atypical features are present in these melanocytic cells, and prominent nucleoli may be present. Then inflammation is present in the dermis with melanin incontinence and some fibrosis. And this is an intradermal nevus where you can see large nests of melanocytic cells in the dermis. However, no atypical nuclear features are present in these cells. Now these are the benign nevus cells. You can see some multinucleation here, but most of these cells are regular and you do not see much mitotic activity. Now these are the melanoma cells. Okay, thank you.